iPad, iPhone, Apple Watch, whatever I need to on whatever trip I would need to take them on. I can charge them up. I wouldn't have to worry about, oh, hey, it was, yeah, we're going camping, or yeah, we're gonna go stay in this trailer or whatever, and is it gonna have enough juice, or is it gonna have enough outlets in order for me to be able to charge my stuff along with whoever else is staying there? Nope, I can just plug everything into this right here. What's cool about this, say it's completely dead, it's 0% charge, we drained it all. You can plug it in to the wall, and then you can get to 80% charge in an hour and a half. All right, so let's talk about the big guy here, the 535. So the 535 has all the same features the 521 has, but more, bigger, and badder. It's awesome. So it's got 4 AC outlets, 3 USB-A, 1 USB-C, all those are fast charging, and the car socket right there. And obviously you have all the display buttons and stuff like that, so you can see how much of a charge it has. I've been using this guy to like charge up all my devices, so it's at 47% right now. This thing is a monster of a battery. This is perfect for people that are doing long camping trips, like a week-long camping trip or 5 days, or gonna be staying in like a fifth wheel or travel trailer or something like that, and like you're like not sure if you're gonna be able to plug in. You can power so much of that just from this. The 535 here can do the same kind of fast charging that the 521 can do, but it can go from 0 to 80% in 2.5 hours. And considering how much bigger of a battery this thing has, that's really impressive. So you can plug all the stuff in 0 to 80% in 2.5 hours. That's pretty cool. And both of these ship not only with just the AC wall outlet, but there's also a car socket charger for them. So if you're taking them on a long road trip and, as you're driving from point A to point B, you can plug them into your car and make sure they're topped up. Personally, I think both of these power stations are really interesting if you do a lot of camping trips, road trips, you're in a travel trailer. If you're like me and you live in an area in the summertime, you're just going to lose power. Thank you, PG&E. Having these around is kind of a must. I know for me, like, I'm just kind of already prepping for the summer and losing power, and I'm thinking, okay, when that happens, I'm gonna be able to plug my router into this guy, I can plug my laptop into this guy, I can plug a fan into this guy, so that way I can just keep working even while the power's out. And that to me is really good peace of mind as a business owner, as somebody that just can't afford to stop working because, oh, hey, my house doesn't have power for some reason. So I'm gonna put links to both of these in the description below so you can go and check them out. Like I mentioned, I already did a dedicated video on this guy right here, so I will also put that in the description below so you can check that out. My thanks to Anchor for sponsoring this video. If you like the video, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you haven't already, and have a great day.
In this video, I'm going to go over why I stopped using the Kanban board community plugin inside of Obsidian, and why I'm actually using the core plugin for tags and the tag pane to actually do the same thing and actually give me more flexibility in what I'm doing inside of my notes. So when we go into Obsidian, you can see this is the script for the video. I'm going to go into my settings, community plugins, browse, and this is the plugin that I've stopped using, the Obsidian Kanban plugin. Now, in previous videos, I have showed how I use this, and there are lots of features that I could have used, but I didn't, so date adding, task adding, archiving, etc. But I chose not to use them because most of my tasks, projects, actions, goals, those sorts of things are done in another application, because Obsidian is notes specific, it's knowledge management specific. So I use my Kanban plugin for my notes. So that's the monthly observations of educational science. You can see I'm using tags, and this is what the board used to look like, but in vertical format. There are some things I liked about the board which I now don't have anymore, some that I liked that I still have, and then there are some things as to what I didn't like, which is why I'm not using tags. So the dragging option was very, very nice, because you can drag the page from between status to status. So something in the to read section, so any of these, I could drag the page across into the done section, or to write section, to check section, etc. But one of the limitations here is, as you can see here, there are only 4 columns. But when I go into research, well, there's many more columns. Now, these columns meant that I had to scroll right and left, which became a bit of a friction point to me when I had to navigate around pages, especially when I had to bring up a page and then bring up the board to see what status they were in, because I've only got half the page. So if I open up another page here, imagine this is a board with, what's that, 7 columns, and I'm scrolling left and right quite a bit, so it became a bit of a friction point. And in a similar sense, if I click on paper, there are 52 papers in here, and having a column with 52 things is a lot of scrolling. Now, admittedly, I don't use it that much, but 19, 17, these sorts of numbers are more realistic to see in a board. Now, in this search, you can see it's very, very quick to just see everything. If I really wanted to, I could drag that down and now see everything. In the board view, I didn't have that flexibility. I could change the size of the cards and the width of the cards, but it was either making it, okay, more scrolling left and right, and less scrolling up and down, or more scrolling up and down and less left and right. So it became a dimension sort of puzzle, like how would I want to configure all of this, whereas in the tags pane is just all done for me, really, from my use case. The page preview in the core plugin, so the ability to find and see the page like this, you can see here. This is a core plugin inside of Obsidian. It's not community plugin specific, but the fact that you could do this in the Kanban board was very nice. Now you can see I can already do this all over Obsidian, so even though I stopped using the Kanban plugin, I'm still in Obsidian, so I still have this feature, which is why I didn't go to somewhere like Trello or any other Kanban board plugin, because I can't actually see the note when I want to see it and have a look in that space. The workspace shortcuts was something else that I use a lot with the boards. So the workspace, again, is another core plugin. You can see it's here, manage workspaces. I have a hotkey, so Control-Shift-O, H is my home. So this is my home workspace. I've got the File Explorer, Search, tag, Start pane, Tags pane, Backlinks, Outline, and then the local graph view. Even though it says graph of home pane, it's just a graph. If I go
Morning.
To workspace, so new, there's a different organization.
Doing another take it easy day with Mr. Diesel here. Mainly for the drops. So that when I get to level 34, I can afford the fast spikes. I rode like 60k yesterday, 43k gravel ride, road and gravel ride, and then some commuting to get some headphones, and then picking up the car. So,
see that. And this is something else with my nose boards, because they're individual pages.
I am feeling tired.
Yeah, each board is a different page.
Probably be on around 6:15 tomorrow as well, Pacific. Give myself a good warm up for the Tour of Watopia Stage 3. Hopefully my legs are feeling good. Feel like we do today. They're just gonna be tired. That'll be a hard slog up the Alps with tomorrow. Ultimately, I'd like to go sub 60 minutes, but we'll see if that actually happens tomorrow. Wednesday night I was feeling good. I did it with my local club. We did a club ride up there. But today I'm feeling tired, so my legs really got to come back for tomorrow. Scroll left and right to try and find the status. Oh, that's where the status is. Close that down and then carry on working. Whereas here I can just go straight to the top of the page and go, okay, that's the status. But now, once I've finished with it, so once the MOS has been published, if you're interested in my monthly observations of educational science, if you're interested in it, there's a link in the description to the Patreon. But when I've done it, I just go, paper. Now it's out of that board and into this board, so you can see it's gone from 52 to 53, and that's it. That's all I need to do, which means it hasn't been archived or completed. It's just been moved to a different board. Now I could do that with the Kanban board plugin and have the boards one like on top of each other or next to each other and then drag them over, but it's much easier just to get rid of a word and type a word and try and find the right columns in the two pages and drag them across. Really small workflow difference, but the amount of times I do it, it's just much easier to do it like this with the tags now. Now, also in the Kanban view, this is going to be moving as to why I started using tags, the number count. You can see here, I can see all of the different numbers in here, but in the Kanban view, I can't see that. So if I want to know how many articles are going to be in the MOS for that month, I can just go straight in here and say, okay, I'm working on 13. At the moment, I've done 3. In the Kanban board, I needed to either manually count it or have just like a rough guess, which was irritating. It just was. It was irritating. So that was one of those points that I didn't think I would need, but having just a running number here is just very, very nice. And again, when I'm actually inside of my research, PhD research, I can see how many things I'm passively looking at. So all of these things are related to PhD, but I'm not really looking at them at the moment. Whereas active, I can see I'm active on 16. I've actually done some of them, but again, another thing that I can do in tags, which I can't do in, which I couldn't do in the Kanban, new. So this page, cognitive load theory, I have something new in this page. If I go down to the to-do section, these are 3 papers that I want to add to this, but I've done this. I'm pretty happy with this page, so it is part of research. It is active, and it was done, but there's just some new stuff that might have something to add, but I don't know. Now, there was no real place to put that in the board apart from adding another column, but now there's more left and right. Whereas here, I can just go, okay, there's a new thing in there. Or I'm collecting things on these pages, so it's not a, I need this column, but it's still there, nice to have. So I would just have the active, these are all the active pages, and I work through them. Let's go back to it here. I couldn't see the stage on the page, which I've gone through already, so if I actually go to this page right here, it's not linked to anything, it's not got any stages. This is the conference that's currently going on, so if I go into outline, you can see, actually, let's just go into my actual view instead of my homepage view, and you can see this. So I've got Tiago Forte and August Bradley. Their presentations have been done so far. This video will probably be posted towards the end of the week, so all of the presentation notes will be up if you want to see them. Obsidian published, link in description, but this note doesn't have any tag. It's not anywhere, it's not linked to anything yet. If I go into here, it's not linked to anything, it's just a capture note, it's just there. So again, Kanban board works fine, but when I go into something like this, where I've got loads of notes going on, but now I have something that, like, it's at a stage, I need to be able to see it, which I can do now, rather than having to open it up in a separate panel. And the other point that I was going to raise, this local graph view. Some people don't like the local graph view, which I understand. I personally do use it and like it quite often, like it quite a lot, because I can see, like, priority of the note when I'm inside the note. So this one is a PhD-specific note. And all of these blue points are other notes specific to my PhD research. And if I come into groups, I'll quickly show you the filter. It is filtered for working notes folder, but there we go. It's blue for research and orange for notes. So I know immediately if there are notes related to this PhD research that I'm either not looking at in depth in research, or maybe I should be looking at in depth, which is what I've actually done. So where is it? It is hearing. I didn't think hearing was going to be part of my research, but it actually is because of research stuff, the perceptions of mental processing, etc., etc. But this was just a notes page, so I had this as a tag under notes. But then I realized actually it's part of research, and it's just an other section. It's not drastically important. It's just there. So I realized that through the local graph view because it was an orange dot. There you go. Communication. Is communication going to be part of my PhD research? Maybe it should be because it's related to this. I will probably do that off camera if it is, and thinking about it now, it probably will be. So I will come into here. At the moment, you can see it's notes and expanding. So what I'll do is I'll add a different tag, and I will be able to see it straight away. If I go into my homepage again, I will see something very similar. I can see blue and orange. Orange goals, not really related to PhD research. I still have loads of notes on. So they are the main reasons as to why I stopped using the Kanban plugin and how I'm using tags instead. But if you do use the Kanban board, I'd be interested to hear in the comment section below how you're using it and why you're using it. And if you do choose to use it, what your reasons are for using it. I'm not to say you should or shouldn't. It's just personal preference, of course. So yeah, be interesting to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Who doesn't love a good bike build video? I actually looked at the photos when I bought my, what is it, Caledonia, but couldn't find one.
the big thing. I couldn't find one on my price point, which was like the lowest end it was offering. So, so I ended up actually spending a little less on the Caledonia 105. Thinking I can upgrade to Di2 later, which I probably will, but not this summer. Maybe next summer. We start to pull some shifts at the bike shop, so this should be fun. So wait until I get a good discount and then do it. Until the rep likes me, maybe get a discount from them, which I used to do at the paddling shop sometimes. One fancy torque wrench. I was actually looking at the Park Tools one yesterday at the shop. 2 days ago. Didn't get it right now, but I did order some other tools. In my last house, I didn't have a lot of space, so I had to have everything compact. Here, I've got a big shop team, so I can spread out my tools. I have a bunch of bigger, nicer ones, like the T-handle, Park Tool stuff. So we'll get there eventually. They had to order them in for me, so they had some in stock. They thought, but everyone at the shop guys claimed them. So mine will come in, I don't know, a few weeks or something. So this is fine. I don't need them immediately. I'll probably just up my tool game every so often in the shop. Nah, just go tubeless. Forget tubes. Go tubeless, go tubeless. I say that and my bike isn't tubeless right now, but it will be once I get the can tire off. Maybe I'd carry a Tubulito as a spare. They're pretty expensive in Canada, so like 3 times the price of a regular one, I guess. I want to carry 2 for a bike packing trip. Would be the way to go because they're so light. Just go tubeless. Tubeless is where it's at.
Both nice, but the Pro one's still like, look, green is not my thing, so I'm sure it's more powerful for all. The iPad Air, this is a product that is made out of existing parts.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, hello. It's me. And it's Dan. I'm Jason Snell from Six Colors. Dan Morin, also from Six Colors, joins me remotely via satellite or whatever, the internet.
Hello, Jason.
Hello, Dan. Happy noon to you over there in the East Coast.
9 a.m. to you.
I had an embargo at 6 a.m.
Always a fun day to get the embargo.
Oh, man. Okay, so here's what this is. Look, you may have read the reviews. You may not have, in which case, why not? We worked hard on that. A bunch of new Apple stuff dropped. YouTubers also dropped their, finely crafted videos that they've made. That's their equivalent of writing words, which is what I primarily do and talk on podcasts. But my friend Mike Hurley suggested that a place where we might provide some value is after an embargo drops, there's often a period of time where we have not only spent time with products, but have access to the products and can answer your questions and can show you stuff in a format that's not, it's not the YouTube format, but it's in the YouTube
well, I lost after this new Mac Studio and the new display.
Here to talk about
I just don't need it, unfortunately.
Air and the
So I get to save $7,000.
green iPhones. You want to talk about? I have them.
If I did some more video work,
And by the way, people are asking, Jason, what about
so
the camera?
if I use like mainly video work, it would make sense, but I'm not.
Yeah, it is. This
So it
is
doesn't
the
make
camera
sense.
that John Rupert needed to tell. Hey,
I'm behind DD till now,
Jason,
so
there have been a number of questions about the camera already, but I
let's
wanted
try and catch up.
It's funny because looking at us right now, obviously it's Zoom. I can see in my Zoom my camera at full quality, and I can see your camera probably at somewhat less than full quality because that's just how Zoom works. And to my eyes, my camera looks a little sharper in the ears. But then I look at the live stream where you've got your camera and my camera coming in. My camera looks terrible compared to your camera. So it's really a matter of context.
I blew you up really big. Would it be better if I just did like make it like a little Dan there? Okay. No.
Yeah, there will be sharper.
Jason and Tiny Dan in our adventures in the. Well, I mean, I like equal sizes.
I'm using a 5K iMac to put it that way, right? And that is in a much older webcam. It's what used to be the state of the art until sort of the new the M1s came with the 1080. I guess the iMac Pro had a 1080, and it was I think the first the first Mac to have a 1080p webcam.
So I mean, the webcam is what everybody's talking about. By the way, I just switched to the overhead view here of my desk. You can see all the new products are here. There's the display. There's the Mac Studio. I am streaming this from the Mac Studio and coming to you from the. Oh, I went up and it went up. Oh, look at that.
I just do that. That's
so anyway. Again, this is what we're doing. We're actually using this stuff. You'll see the other new products there. Yes, we can unbox those green iPhones if you really want to later. And this has been my setup for the last week plus. And yeah, so it's been. I migrated my entire iMac Pro to the Mac Studio. I will then, of course, have to migrate it elsewhere when I send this one back to Apple. But I thought I would live with it for a while. And the Mac Studio is really good. I described it as homely. I think you got to come to love how it looks because out of the box you don't go wow. You go it's really like a big tall block of aluminum that looks kind of like a Mac Mini. But I have the M1 Max version. It's very powerful. It puts my iMac Pro to shame. It puts the Mac Pro to shame. I can't speak about the M1 Ultra. I know The Verge got one and a couple other people got them. I did not get the Ultra, so I can't really talk about just how much faster it is. Is it 2 times faster in some tests, and is it only incrementally faster in others? It's twice the price, so that's a big deal. But I will say that it showed it was substantially faster than than an M1 MacBook Air or my old 8-core iMac Pro in a bunch of pretty intensive stuff that I do, especially using Isotope to denoise audio files for podcasts, which is part of my workflow, and Final Cut Pro exports. And you can see all the charts on 6 colors; they're all there. It's a very impressive machine. That said, and Dan, you know this from all of our coverage of the M1, is with Apple Silicon right now, it really is like the chip is the chip is the chip.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think a fair way to think of Mac Studio performance is if you compared it to a comparably equipped MacBook Pro, especially the 16 that's got a little more cooling and a little more power, you would find that they're exactly the same speed because they are. They are the same computer essentially in a different shape, just as those M1s are all the same computer in a different shape.
Yeah, all the way from the MacBooks to the iMac to the iPad Pro and the new iPad Air, all of those using M1s, which are basically exactly the same, just maybe differ slightly in the amount of RAM depending on your configuration, but clockwise.
Enjoy the logo there. I find your image disconcertingly small, so I had to make it bigger. I also have, by the way, let's see if I can get this to work. This will be fun. I also have another special view, which is the handheld view. So if we need to go
we're going handheld
in depth, like all the way into the ports on the front of the Mac Studio, we could do that too. That's a thing that is available to us.
Okay, so that's like the Blair Witch Project.
People want to see stuff. Yeah, that's great. I'll turn it around. Help! See, now you can see. So a lot has been written and a lot is being talked about this morning. Oh, see, there it goes. The cameraman woke up. So this is my complaint about this camera, and center stage in general, but on this one it seems worse, which is it seems really bad at just leaving you off center in the screen for several seconds before finally centering you up. And I don't love it. I haven't had as much problem with the image quality in center stage mode as other people seem to have had, and maybe it's my lighting. I have a giant window over here that is shining onto my face, but it seems okay to me, and when I compared it to center stage on my iPad Pro, I found that it was not worse, and in fact, it actually looked a little bit better to my eyes than that. So I can't entirely explain what's going on where John Gruber and Neely Patel and Joanna Stern really hate this. Ooh, look, as I'm about to drink tea, and you can see in the overhead shot, I'm sliding the teacup right over. See, went out of there and came over here. So I was too busy being bugged by center stage putting me vaguely left in the camera for a while until the virtual cameraman wakes up and goes, oh, yeah, right, and then slides me into the center. Or I have to bounce a little, and then it kicks into gear. I think there's work to be done here, and this is the first macOS implementation. I'm unclear. I assume that the A13 is actually doing the processing here and then just sending the video to macOS, but I'm unclear on exactly how that works. My big complaint, and I wonder if I could do this here. See, I didn't even take tea because I'm too busy. Here. Is if I could turn off center stage. Get ready for something, everybody. This is what happens when you turn off center stage.
Ah!
Oh, this is interesting. Live by Ecamm has not changed my picture at all, whereas Dan in Zoom
but I see you. Your head is just above the frame now.
Yeah,
it looks like you took your chair and just did one of these.
Well, so that's really interesting. Is that Ecamm is taking it directly from the camera input apparently, whereas Zoom is actually responding to the center stage toggle in the control center. That's fascinating. There was that before. Anyway, when you turn it off or you open an app that doesn't know how to use it, like Photo Booth, which apparently hasn't been updated by anybody at Apple in a million years, you get this weird. It's kind of center cut in that widescreen camera. It's kind of carving out a center part it's like a virtual non-center stage, virtual webcam.
Sure.
That image is really bad. It is badly cropped because it's like cropped like this, so you're sitting in front of the display and it's the top half of your head. And that one is super grainy. That one is where I noticed that the image quality was really awful.
Which is fascinating because it is such a more higher resolution camera, period, than anything.
I think it's a 20 megapixel camera. I think bottom line, you can't. Nile wrote something on The Verge today that I think is absolutely right. It's a lesson I learned a long time ago, which is you can't give credit for the company fixing something that's broken until they fix it. I suspect this is a software problem more than a hardware problem. And I know John Gruber was speculating that maybe it's the A13 not being as good as an image signal processor. The A13 has literally nothing else to do. You would hope that it would be able to.
It's a good chip. I mean, it was the state of the art a couple of years ago. It should be able to handle. Yeah.
Also, and this is just throwing out some ideas there. If it's not good enough, you should pipe the full 20 megapixel image back to the Mac Studio with the freaking M1 Max on it. Let it process the video.
It's fascinating. I wonder if there's some weird conflict in there with the fact that presumably the Studio Display must have its own internal firmware, iOS, something running in it.
Okay,
right?
I'm not going to show it to you, but I have in the past week gotten the your display rebooted because of an error dialogue that came up. That was different.
Okay.
And I have also turned on. So I mentioned in my review the switched power strip that I've been using since 2007, which David Pogue actually wrote about it in the New York Times. That's how long ago it was. And I thought it was a clever idea. And I got it's to save energy, but also I was using a pair of speakers that when you shut down your Mac, and so there's no input going to the speakers out of the mini jack, it would just buzz. And I was like, no, I don't want that. So then it all shuts down. So initially when I had this set up, I had it in my old power strip settings. And one thing that was funny is that I would turn on the Mac Studio, and then the power would go to the Mac Cinema to the Cinema display, or sorry, Studio display. God, that is also a Studio display. And it would boot up. And it was very weird because it took longer for the Studio display to boot up than the Studio. So then it would come up and the Studio would already have booted up into the Finder, but the monitor had to start up too. And it has the three little dots and it goes like this and then it flips on.
So there's some stuff happening in the display because obviously, as we talked about a few other places, this display could be used with other Macs. So stuff that may not be prepared like to, if it's connected to an Apple Silicon or it's connected, God knows, to a Windows PC. I know not every feature works if it's on the Windows side, but doing some of that stuff on the display, you feel like maybe they're trying to have it internal so they can just hand off the finished result to whatever computer it's connected to rather than worrying about that computer handling the processing. But maybe there's some problem with the interplay of those two systems and it's not working as expected.
And Apple's never going to say, right? So we just have to guess. But and I know that this is compatible with all sorts of devices that are not Macs running Apple Silicon. That said, I do wonder hopefully they'll just get it right in the hardware and fix the firmware or whatever to do what it needs to do. But if they had to outsource it on Apple Silicon Macs to the processors on those Macs for better image processing, maybe they could do that too. Anyway, I don't know what else. I mentioned that the Mac Studio is homely. If I switch over from the overhead to the handheld, I'll just say, as I said in my review, the whole point of it is function over form, right? That's the whole idea, is that people complained that Apple was prioritizing form over function. You don't put 2 ports and a slot on the front of a computer if you care about form over function, because what are you even doing? And then if we look from the top-down shot, you can see all those cables coming off the back. There are so many ports. Every port is full back there right now. That's 2 USB-A, 4 Thunderbolt USB-C. I guess the HDMI port isn't being used at the moment, and the headphone jack is not being used at the moment, but everything else is being used back there.
Right. So I mean, this is sort of the, I don't know, culmination, but next step in the whole issue what we had a few years ago with obviously the butterfly keyboards and Apple getting to a point where they were routinely prioritizing stuff that looked great over stuff that worked well, and it seems very much like they've learned the lesson, at least on the pro side, that this, people don't care about a computer that's a little thicker or takes up more room on your desk or has a lot of wires coming off of it if it performs well.
So I've got this handheld shot back here. Somebody asked, they got the impression somehow that there were not removable cords on the display, and that's not true. It comes with this Thunderbolt cable that you see there braided. That not long enough if you want to put this under your desk, but long enough if you want to sit it on your desk. And then
it's not going to be cheap if you want to buy the other one.
No,
it's like $150.
And then this is pretty much straight up standard power plug on the back of it too. So it's there's really.
I was wondering about that mainly because it didn't include the power cord in the what's in the box section on the display for some reason. Usually Apple does, but
I don't know. They don't consider that an accessory. That's actually a necessary part of the program.
So
I guess.
A couple of questions that I had, and some of this you covered in your review. There was some different opinions on a lot of this stuff. Right? We talked about with the webcam a little bit already. Mics, I think both you and some of the other reviews said like they're pretty good if you're not doing podcasting what we do. You can probably get by with the studio quality mics.
They're good. They're good Zoom mics, right? I think that's the idea, is that they're good for Zoom or something like that. And actually, when they say studio quality, which kills me, I guess we know what studio they were talking about. These. So the if you get up close to them, I think they actually are very good. Just like with the MacBook Pro, if you get up really close to them, they are pretty good, but it's not a natural position that you'll ever be in, right? You're going to be further away, and they're doing their 3 microphone array with beamforming, and they say that it's studio quality. Well, it's pretty decent, and yeah, I would use it without reserve. I would use it for Zoom or something like that. I would absolutely not use it for a podcast, and that's why I'm kind of offended when they call it studio quality, because I don't like, if you care about the audio, you're not going to use it. But it's not bad.
Over on the Rebound, I think we described it as a studio apartment quality, perhaps, or our studio quality.
There's a little echo to it, but it's surprisingly good for something that's like way far away from you in the display when you're talking. And then the speakers.
Yeah, you thought the speakers weren't as good as some of the other people who were using them.
Yeah, I guess everything is. Everybody's got their issues. I don't think they sound as good as my iMac Pro speakers, quite frankly, and they're certainly not a replacement for external speakers if you really care. I didn't like the bass as much. It sounded more tinny to me when I was editing a podcast on it. I was used to editing podcasts first on an external set of speakers that were wired, and then for the last 6 months, I've been using the iMac Pro speakers to edit podcasts. and I preferred that sound to the sound out of the studio display. It just felt a little bit lighter, and so I do not doubt that these are based probably on the same tech that they put in the MacBook Pro, and I do not doubt that they're impressive for what they are. And if you're using it for Zoom, or maybe even using it to listen to music if you don't care that much about how your music sounds and it doesn't bother you, but you know, I feel like that's the place where people can overhype this stuff that Apple is saying, the studio speakers and microphone. They're nice, but they're not groundbreaking or shattering in any way. I think it's funny that I complain about those and then everybody else complains about the webcam, which everybody can judge for themselves. I mean, I think it looks okay. I have issues with it, but I don't think it's a disaster.
No,
maybe it's the fact that I have a big window. I don't know. Joanna Stern seemed to be offended when I said that it wasn't that she wasn't lit properly, but I don't know. I don't have. By the way, I have giant TV lights over my head that are not on. This is being lit by a floor lamp, an wugly floor lamp that you might have seen earlier when I went handheld, and the big window.
Yeah, I would say, and I
that's it.
think it looks better. I mean, I have lights on because if I don't, then if I turn off my little string light here, I just get very shadowy. And I also have a window right here.
Shadowy
So
figure.
I don't like that.
People
as
are.
much.
You gotta please enjoy me drinking tea where you can see my tea overhead. You'll know when I'm out of tea, by the way. Do you have any questions before we go? Oh no, Zoom quit. Hey everybody, that's a thing that happens. And Zoom quits, and then Dan goes away, and I'm gonna have to take some questions from everybody else while we wait. This is good. This is good stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff. All right.
Nope.
Hi.
Yep, I don't know what happened there, but
Wow.
I'm gone. I'm back.
Dan's sort of back now.
Okay.
Zoom quit, Dan. Good news. Zoom quit.
Okay, great. Enjoy that.
I'm gonna remove myself. Can I do that?
There you go.
Okay. Well, you're back.
I am back. I'm not, yeah, that was an exciting moment there, as you froze, and I was like, I don't know if I'm still live or Jason's still live or neither of us.
I don't think that's how that works. But we'll just, we'll figure it out. That's the second hard crash I've had in Zoom this last week, which is interesting, and I wonder if that's an Apple Silicon thing.
That could be. I was going to ask you. So the version of the studio display that you have is the standard stand, correct?
Standard stand, yes.
Standard stand. Which I was trying to figure out because, like, so you mentioned in your review, I think that it can get up to 4.2 inches higher with the height adjustable stand. I think something in that range.
Yeah. It
I'm
starts
guessing
at
because I've got my measuring tape because I'm trying to figure out like my monitor is about 21 3/4 inches or so up around there, which I think is pretty good for me. But it's on a riser. My iMac is on a riser because I need it. Like if I don't have that, I have to like hunch my neck because it's too low. So now I'm trying to figure out if the height adjustable stand 4.2 inches at first doesn't sound like a lot, but then you think about it and you're like, oh, that's actually a pretty good chunk of like the for a 20-inch high display or something like that. So I'm just trying to figure out if it. So I guess like what the maximum of that height actually is. Like what's the swing on that? But I guess we're sort of conjecturing here.
Well, I mean, you can. So, all right, I'm not going to get out the measuring tape right now. I'm not going to do that. I am trying to crop you better on the live stream though. That's a lot of fun.
I appreciate it.
But it was a disaster. Zoom's just going to quit again and make me sad. So, I got so many different cameras. It's a little lower than an iMac 27. Like somebody was asking how much lower. I don't know. I didn't measure like that much lower. I had them side by side for a little while. It's just all down a little bit. And then you can look on the Apple website. Basically, the low point of the adjustable display is the point of the non-adjustable display, and then you can basically go
so it's all up
6 inches from there.
Okay, right, that's pretty
which
good.
Makes it decent. That's another thing. Again, in a day where everybody's really angry about the webcam, and I wrote my review, and I'm like, it's got some bugs. And yet I haven't noticed anybody say things like how it's outrageous that Apple is charging $1,600 for a display that's not adjustable, and then charging you $400 more for adjusting it. Like, where's the outrage, people? Like,
I would just get the VESA mount, put it on my dual mounty thing.
That's the one that got me, is fundamental ergonomics and making your $1,600 display not have to be put on a dictionary for less than $400. Come on. So
yeah, I mean, at least it's not the $1,000 of the Pro Display XDR, but I guess they've gotten better at hinge technology.
Well, it's not. It doesn't rotate, right? It just goes up and down. The Pro Display XDR stand is very different because you can like pull it up and turn it sideways.
Right.
All sorts of stuff.
I agree. It should be. That's like table stakes. I mean, you might complain about HDR not being there, or local backlight dimming or whatever. But honestly, I just don't want to tweak my neck every time I look at a display.
You can actually see the cinema display or the camera in the studio display. I'm going to keep calling it cinema display. Adjusting when I don't know if that's a good adjust or not, but it's trying to adjust to the color temperature and the light change when the white reflective mug comes up. It's real. We're testing this real time, everybody.
Real time. Should we field some questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, I'm going to start off with some questions from our 6 Colors subscriber Slack, which of course you can become a member of if you want to sign up at 6colors.com.
Such a deal. Thank you for the promo there. $6 a month, $60 a year. We'll get you in.
Yeah. So let's see here. If I want to run, Dan asks, not me, but another Dan asks.
So many
I always take questions from Dan's first. That's my private membership program. If I want to run 2 displays off a MacBook Pro, does that mean using 2 ports on the laptop, or can they be daisy chained?
The laptop?
Oh, in the case of using a MacBook Pro with, say, the Apple Studio display,
Oh.
could you run 2 displays where you have to plug them both into the MacBook Pro, or can you daisy chain them?
It depends on what the displays are. I think the downstream ports on the back of the Studio display are USB-C. They're not Thunderbolt. There's 4 ports back there. One's got the little lightning bolt. The others don't. So I would say It's possible with USB-C, like DisplayPort over USB-C, that you might be able to daisy chain them. Skeptical if you could do that with this display, though.
Two of these probably would require separate Thunderbolt ports off a.
I think
D
so.
because
I
it
think
probably
that's
doesn't run over
well.
USB-C.
Actually, that's not true. It does run over USB-C DisplayPort, so it might work. I'm not sure you would get all the functionality. You might only get the display because it'll run on like a PC and it'll run on an iPad. I attached
right.
my
That's a good
iPad Pro to it, and it's ridiculous because it's this pillar boxed thing, but it worked. And in fact, it even channeled the USB-C that was attached to the back of the display. I picked up my Ethernet and I picked up my keyboard and my trackpad when I hooked up the iPad to it. The iPad connection to it was Thunderbolt actually, but USB-C iPad Air will do it too. We'll drive it.
Here wants to know, does the display auto-rotate? I think we covered that the stand doesn't let you rotate, so I'm not sure if we have a good way of testing this without manhandling the display into
Dan, this is live video. Let's try it.
Oh, jeez. Oh, God.
Doesn't look like
no. I'm going to say no. It does not auto-rotate.
But that was
that
was
option's
video,
not
wasn't it? You saw me from the perspective of the rotated, and you saw the thing down below. Well, I don't think it does. I think the idea there is that it can be rotated. You can go to display settings and rotate it if you're on a VESA arm. But I don't think it's got a sensor in it.
It's not going to do it. Okay.
So, yeah. Glad we tried that though.
Let's see. Zach wants to know, do you think there's any chance of a version of this without the camera and speakers because he doesn't want to pay for 3 cameras and 3 sets of speakers? I'd say probably not is my guess. I'm guessing you think the same. They're not going to just make one. The Pro Display doesn't have a webcam because of it's aimed at pros, but
I think that's right. I think that this is a product that is designed for people who actually want to have a webcam and microphones and stuff in it. And if you don't want those things, Apple, it's not that there aren't products for you out there maybe that are not ideal, but Apple's not making this for you to save. They're not going to make like a cut rate one without the stuff. Like that's
right.
They are making the whole product, and this is the product they want to make.
Paul asks, I think this is about the Mac Studio. You mentioned the fan is always on but quiet. Did it ever get annoying, the constant hum?
That's also a personal question. Personal choice. I noticed it when my office was completely silent. But my office is rarely completely silent, and any other noise would make it not noticeable. But versus the iMac Pro, which had a fan, but it was on the back, so it was kind of shielded, and this one's out on my desk, and the holes are on the back. But I'd say it's audible, but only if you're listening for it, and only if you're in a perfectly quiet space. So if you're sensitive to sound and in a perfectly quiet space, I think you'll hear it. I couldn't get them to crank up or anything. I put it through a lot of tests. I was trying to heat it up. It never ever really sounded much more than it sounds all the time. I should also mention, I'm going to flip to the overhead shot for this because people really love this. There's also a fan in this up here. And it's very quiet and you would never notice, but if you hold your hands over it, you can actually feel the air coming off of it. So there's something going on in there. But it's not a fan, it's a very powerful convection. I think there's a fan. I think that's what it is. But,
you can bake your cookies.
But you can't hear it. So if there is a fan in there, you basically, I put my ear right up against it, and I got more of a sensation from air blowing into my ear than I did from the actual sound of it. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. But so it is different from my iMac Pro experience. And the iMac Pro experience was quiet. The iMac 5K was not so quiet.
Yeah, I have a 5K, and at first, when I first started using it, I didn't notice the fans as much, but nowadays, probably because they've got more dust in them, I notice it a lot more.
Yeah. So anyway, it is there, and it's running all the time, as far as I can tell. Because I started up and it's running. It's always running. But it's very quiet, and it's just a little white noise. But it's not zero.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of the iMac Pro, Jeff asks, I'd like to hear more about your thoughts on the difference in experience of using Mac Studio plus Studio Display compared to your iMac Pro. Are there any comparisons you can share so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's way faster at almost everything, and that's owing to not just going from the 8-core Xeon to the 10-core M1 Max in this system that I've got, but it's also twice as fast, I think, in terms of storage. I mean, that computer is from 2017. It's not SSD speeds have gone way up since that iMac Pro. But it's got the modern, same as the MacBook Pros, it's got the faster SSDs, so it feels way faster. The display is very familiar and comfortable. I actually have a nano texture display, by the way, which some people didn't get. It's fine, it seems unnecessary to me, but I also don't have a window right behind me. At Macworld back in the day, I had a window right behind me, and it was very hard to use a glossy display, so it's there if you need it. But otherwise, I know the 600 nits max, so originally I was told that it was the same panel. It is not the same panel because it's a 600 nits backlight, but it's essentially, it looks exactly the same.
Revised version of
the specs are the same. It was a very familiar panel to me coming from the iMac Pro, and I never have my brightness up all the way anyway. Right. I know there's also been some criticism of knowing what modern display tech is out there now that Apple is making this display like it is, because this is kind of old tech. I get the argument, but I think you're also arguing against non-existence. What you're basically saying is Apple made a display that's actually appropriate after several years where they abandoned the market, and the only option that was really a good fit was that LG display that people didn't love, but thought was okay. And this is way better than that, and it's got a bunch of things to commend it, and it's actually less expensive than I thought Apple would charge for it. Could Apple make a groundbreaking display? Yeah, they could. They already made one, and it cost $5,000. And,
well, Film, I don't know when you hopped in, but I see there's one person watching now, so
but again, if they
if you got any questions, want to chat, put it in the comments.
Say, I can't believe Apple charged so much
I'll
for
try to answer them.
They're picking and choosing, right? They're trying to figure out where
Just listen to people from Six Colors talk about the new Mac stuff,
that I think are nice, other than
which I want to say I could buy, but I can't really buy.
But in general, I think, I get what they're doing here, and I find it comforting that this is a very familiar, solid 5K 27-inch. It's what macOS is sort of designed to be at this resolution, at this size. So that part of it works for me. Even though I have no doubt that they want to build another Pro Display XDR kind of like super high end, and maybe something in between that is, for people who want to spend the money on a HDR display that's like a big MacBook Pro display or something. We'll get there, but I find it very familiar and comforting. This question was about like compared to my iMac Pro. The other thing I will say is I mentioned this in the review. I do find it disconcerting that I've got this thing on my desk now, because I didn't used to have that thing. I only had the screen, and the screen's this is on a display, but eventually I will get one of these of my own, and it will be on a VESA mount. But still, there will still be that box on my desk, and I'm not used to it, and I don't know if I like it. And I probably will see if I can mount it on the underside of my desk, because it's just a whole bunch of cables coming out of the little cable gopher hole there. And I don't know, it's just different. I'm getting used to it, but I spent so much time without a computer on my desk that I find that strange, and I'm not sure I like it, but it's okay.
Can you put the display on top of the mix?
You
Does that
can.
make sense?
I don't think it does.
Seems a little precarious potentially.
I mean, it fits in the footprint of it, so you could do it. But then you've got it. Then it's pretty
how
tall.
high is way too high? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, because this isn't a Mac Mini. But I should say, speaking of which, I did use this with my MacBook Air too. I plugged in all my cables to that I normally have on the back of my iMac to this display, and then attached my MacBook Air M1 to it, and that was great. That was a great experience. Anybody who's used external displays with Apple Silicon Macs knows that they're way better than Intel Macs used to be with external displays. The M1 is fast. It worked like a charm. And I think that because of the way this was announced in the coverage now, we're spending a lot of time focusing on the display and the Mac Studio as a pair. But I would even maybe bet, well, I won't bet money, but I will guess, how about that the primary use case will be with laptops. And Mac Minis will be nice too, and second displays will be great, but I think it's going to be great for laptops because you're going to get your webcam and microphone and speakers and charging all in that one cable, and it behaves really nicely with that.
David asked, did you notice any image quality fall off at the edges or any refresh rate limits when scrolling or other fast motion content?
Feels very much like the 5K panel in the iMac and the iMac Pro. There's nothing like that. I mean, it's a 60 hertz display. You're not going to get ProMotion, but it is. It seems completely identical, honestly, to the panel in the most recent iMacs and the iMac.
Trying to give it right on and accidentally fan viewing.
As an LG 5K owner, I'd like to know if you have a studio.
Guess I still have to do that to get my badge for it.
I mean, it depends on your desk too, because this desk wiggles a little bit when I shake it. But I don't know what to tell you. I usually have my monitor on a VESA mount, so it's got a long arm on it and it shakes a little bit. So compared to that, it doesn't shake at all. But it really depends on your setup and your
vibration
desk
is vibration,
and how hard you type. Honestly.
Yeah.
It seems pretty solid though. I mean, it is mounted fairly solidly to this. So it's not gonna shake itself apart. It's gonna be shaken by what the desk shake is.
Right. JD asks, I'm not 100% sure on this one, but I'll ask you and see if you have thoughts on this. Is it possible to get the full 12 megapixel output from the webcam? Is there a reason why you wouldn't get it?
Well, I mean, like I said, I'm sure it's possible, but the way this seems to be working is Apple has sort of built in two modes for it. It's baked in this really kind of bad, that Dan saw but you didn't, crop mode, where it's trying to pretend to be a dumb webcam and it crops it sort of like your top of your head, and it's grainy and I don't like it. And then there's the center stage mode, where it's what you're seeing right now. I don't know if in software you could choose as an app, you'd need to revise your app, but whether you have the access to that whole image so that you could do something else with it, capture it, reprocess it, it's possible. It may also not be possible. It sort of depends on how Apple wants to do it.
Yeah.
But I would say what Apple seems to have done now is whitelist a bunch of apps that they know are voice over IP, video conferencing apps. They've whitelisted them and turned this feature on for them. I think they did this on the App Store too when Center Stage hit the iPad. So they're like, oh, you're using Zoom. We can use this camera with Zoom. But there's probably going to be an API because that's what happened on the iPad side.
Hey, this is a question for me. Nick asks me, are you still planning to hold out for some future iMac, or is the Mac Studio starting to call out to you? I think it's still too expensive for me. I wrote about this a little bit, obviously, in that mid-range Mac desktop story. It is extremely curious to me that Apple has not used the M1 Pro anywhere on the desktop right now, where your options are essentially you can get M1 Mini or an M1 iMac, or you can get an M1 Max or M1 Ultra Mac Studio. And those are attractive. They're very powerful, but they're obviously also much more expensive than the comparable M1s, and it seems like there's room for something in the middle. So for the moment, I am content to sort of sit tight and see what sort of the next shoe is to drop, whether Apple is going to release an M1 Pro option in the 24-inch iMac or the Mac Mini, or whether we have to wait for the M2 generation. So who knows? I might break down, but for the moment, I'm feeling okay. So I also had some other questions that were not directly about Mac Studio or the Studio Display. Let's answer a couple of those. Somebody had a question about the iPad Air, the new one, and they wanted to know whether the... Are you going to open that up there?
Yeah.
Trying to find it here. The iPad Air 5 only has 2 mics instead of the 5 on the iPad Pro. Does that make an appreciable difference in FaceTime or Zoom calls?
I don't know the answer to that. My guess is it does, but is it enough for you to care?
Probably not unless your hand is covering one of them, maybe, or something.
Yeah, I mean, I've never really experienced it as a problem, but I've used the iPad Pro much more than I've used an iPad Air, so I'm not sure I can tell you. Like, it's wow, that is not what would make me decide between those two. I guess is what I'm saying. But I'm sure it makes a difference. Otherwise, I don't know why Apple would do it.
Jim's got a performance question. I'm really curious. I know you don't have an Ultra, but he says I'm really curious about whether the Ultra is a diminishing returns point versus the Max for tools that I use. Really, how fast does it unzip Xcode?
Yeah, so I didn't do that test, but I did do. James Thompson sent me, his source code, secret source code that I'll be posting on the dark web later for Dice by PCalc, and everything I said about it being exactly like the Max being exactly like the MacBook Pro goes for the Xcode test. It was the same to the second, and Ultra. Like, you can see some of those results are out there. The Verge did get one. They were a little bit skeptical about it. This is my question too: is for twice the price, are they diminishing returns? What I would really say is, I wonder what the market for the Mac Pro is at this point, because who's left? Who's left after you do M1 Ultra? Like, who's left in the market who's like, no, the Mac Studio with M1 Ultra is not enough for me.
Nobody.
I mean, even more than
It's
that.
too slow now. Just retire, I guess, or do something way more powerful than the Studio here.
That's a whole open question,
What will
right?
that even be?
Is Apple going to build a computer where you can put in your own RAM? They've been touting the virtue of the integrated RAM. It seems unlikely in an Apple Silicon world that you're going to have DIMM slots in the Mac Pro. It's not impossible, but it seems unlikely. So, yeah, that's a good
James
question.
Thompson says the dark web deserves everything they get. So thank you to viewer and developer James.
A couple questions about universal control, which also came out this week as part of iOS and macOS. Christopher is discussing his setup, but one question that he is asking is he says it works, it's amazing. I don't know what the actual use is, and curious to know if you have any practical examples of what you have used universal control for.
Well, I have used universal control on my desk, putting an iMac to my right over here where the teacup is, and doing that, doing that a little bit where I have something that I want to see and I'm just going to watch it on the iPad. It's okay. When I visit my mom in Arizona, I only bring the MacBook Air and my iPad, and I tried to use Sidecar there, and I realized that it was silly because why would I put Slack or Fantastical or Twitterific on the iPad on the Mac when I could just run those apps on the iPad?
Right.
And that's the beauty for me of universal control is next time I go visit her, I will bring those things and I'll put them side by side while I'm working, and I'll only need the laptop's keyboard and trackpad to drive the iPad, but it will be running iPad apps. I've also heard from a bunch of people who are very excited because they have two Macs for whatever reason, and they're excited about this for that same reason that you don't have to take your hands off of the one input device to use the second Mac.
I did use the other day with my MacBook Air, my iMac, and my iPad, and it's very trippy to switch back and forth between all those things. But it is extremely cool. I've mainly been using it with my iPad. I've got it open right now, so I can swipe over to it without having to use the touch interface too on the iPad, which is nice in a situation like this, where it's like I'm trying not to lean over and tap a bunch of things on my iPad. I can just sort of go over with that, but it's interesting. It's very powerful. And as a follow up to that, Sam had a question about if you had any thoughts about Universal Control 2.0, what that might look like. Is there anything left in there that we would like to see out of Universal Control, something it doesn't do right now?
Sounds like a great idea for a column that we should write, Dan.
I don't know. I haven't used it enough to feel like I have a strong feeling about what it doesn't do. My biggest request for improvement is reliability, because the issues I've had in the beta are things like the cursor gets stuck on a device, and all of a sudden I can't get it off like my iPad. My Mac has gone to sleep or something. It was still paired with the iPad, and all of a sudden it doesn't want to go back to the Mac. But I mean, that's stuff that gets worked out over time.
Yeah, it's a beta, so let's work on 1.0 first before we move on to 2.0. How about that? I'm sure there are other things that Apple could think of for it to do, but in the end, it really is just sort of keyboard and mouse sharing between devices. And it's actually pretty simple if you think of it that way.
Yeah, right.
And then there's some other stuff like drag and drop and all of that that's on there. I don't know. It's a good question, but let's get that out of beta and reliable. I would like to see that.
I'm going to go to some questions from the YouTube chat. Scrolling back.
I've actually found, because I typed Dvorak and have a custom keyboard that's programmable and everything,
Design representative of the
that
design
I can't get proper letters to type on my iPad with this, so I only spent 2 minutes on it,
I think
but
this is representative of the new
I need to spend some more time maybe and see what happens. The keyboard works fine with the iPad, it works fine with the Mac, but something in the translation between the two just doesn't work.
Mac Pro. I think the iMac Pro is the old regime, right, basically, and this is the new commitment. It has to do with understanding users. I think that if you look at all those ports, this is, and if you look at what's happened in the MacBook Pro especially, they're listening to users. I think just armchair analysis here is they got a little too caught up in the form over function for professional tools. Right. And I think there must have been a conversation that we need to get over it, and if it doesn't fulfill all of our design values, but it gives the pros the tools they want to do their job, then we should just get over it. And I think in that sense, this thing that's got the big forehead and ports on the front and stuff, it's all about function. That's what it's for.
Right.
And good. Good. So I think it's more that if the margin wonks were involved, it would have even more features in it and cost $2,000.
Well, they clearly, the new Ethos hasn't won everywhere yet, because you still have to charge the Magic Mouse upside down. So they
haven't gotten to that one yet.
Yeah, they'll move on. The next generation will tell us.
I'm kind of convinced that all the people who work at Apple don't use that mouse, and so,
I don't think so either.
It doesn't come up so much, but it does still exist, and you still do need to flip it over. What else?
Someone asked if it makes tea, but I think the answer to that is probably no. Sadly, it does not make tea.
If you poured water in it, it would be bad.
It makes sparks. We covered that the power cable can be removed from the back of the studio display, I believe. Someone asked for a demo of the built-in microphones, but I'm not sure if you want to switch to that or not.
How would I even do that?
I don't know, because it depends what app. We just change it in Zoom or change it in Ecan.
Let me see. How about now?
You're extremely quiet.
Hi, can you?
Oh, I can barely hear you. I don't know what's going on with that.
You can't hear me.
Very quiet.
That was just for the live stream. Anyway,
Okay, the live stream got it.
It's okay. Yeah, I would have to change. It's complicated. I would have to change what Dan is hearing. It's a thing. Anyway, that was it briefly for the people who were.
Speaking of sound, Martin asks, do you think the studio display speakers are comparable to the HomePod Mini in a stereo configuration, and are you keeping dedicated speakers in your setup?
You know me. I like to be fair. I like to consider everything. I don't like to make rash statements. No, they're not comparable to the HomePod Mini. They're not. They're not. The HomePod Mini is way better. I think
maybe they need to find the people who worked on the HomePod Mini and have them work on the speakers for the studio display. Maybe that's the answer here.
I think cramming speakers in a little narrow plane,
always tricky.
It's never going to be great. And I think it's great. Again, I think they probably sound as good as you could ever expect them to sound for what the shape of the product that they hide inside is. Right?
There's a physics limitation.
And honestly, if you care about better sound than that, you will get better speakers. Like, I would not want this thing to be more expensive or bulkier or weirder in any way just to make the speakers better. They've worked really hard to make them pretty good for what they are. I still don't think that they compare to any kind of external stereo speakers of any kind.
Got it. There was a question about turning center stage off. I think you addressed that, and it makes it look weird.
It does.
Josh asked relatedly, is there any way to control the camera, i.e. exposure, ISO, etc.?
Not to my knowledge, although, again, this is one of those areas where, oh, look, I put my hand up in the camera move. We don't know, right? Like, it may be that there is an API, or there will be an API, or there is like a secret thing that you can do to get access to that stuff to change the refresh rate or adjust the brightness or whatever. I don't know anything about that, so it might be there, but we just don't know.
It's like a third-party tool situation. Like eyeglasses let you do that, and I think there are some other similar software things that let you do that with the webcams over the years, but the question is whether or not it's accessible via the same API. Simon asks, since we're continuing on this front, is it possible to show off how the settings of the studio display looks? I think we're looking at the UI here, like how center stage is turned on and off.
Well,
I don't know if you have a screen share option.
That would require me to do a screen share, wouldn't it?
We were prepared for all these eventualities, clearly.
I know. This looks like a job for a handheld camera. Let's see here.
Who doesn't like pointing at the phone? Add a screen, the good old analog hole.
Yeah, it is. It's exactly what you'd expect. It's in Control Center. Oh, and I've got it for the 2 different apps. That's why it didn't change earlier. So if I go back down here, maybe I can give the live viewers a very exciting view of... There it is! All right, well, now everybody gets to enjoy this view of me that is locked on target and high up. And it still looks better than it looks in Photo Booth. In Photo Booth, it's a complete disaster. This actually looks better. I really do think that Apple's whitelisting certain apps and channeling the video in a different way, cheating, basically, in order to make their new product that nobody knew about before last week look better. But this is me sitting in the same place, so you can see it's cropped it kind of up, and in Photo Booth, it's literally like this. It's very, very weird.
Is it cropped, or is that the natural angle of that camera?
No, because it goes down. It goes down lower.
Wide angle, right?
Yeah, but it goes down lower, and it's cropping
right, sure,
like
so
up here.
That's very strange.
I don't know, and it's literally facing right at me, and the plane, as people can see, I'll switch back to from the curtain view to this view. I mean, it's basically straight up and down. The camera up there is at an angle a little bit, but it's basically straight up and down. So there's weird stuff going on there, but that's where it is. It's in Control Center, which is a weird place, I think, to put microphone and video settings. But if you've got stuff that's being handled by the system and not by each individual app, I guess that's what you have to do. Is that's how Apple decided to rig it.
Going back to the speakers, whatever asks, the speakers can allegedly do spatial audio, which I know you did mention briefly in your review.
So I watched some of a movie that's got stereo in it, and I listened to some music with spatial audio. And, like, is it spatial audio, or is it just a good stereo effect at that point? I don't know. I think what it means is that it's processing the Dolby Atmos in a custom way to get the most out of its speakers, and that's fine. I did not feel immersed. I just, not sorry to be a skeptic about Apple's studio quality audio, but, it was fine. There's a stereo panning effect going on there, if you want to call that a cinematic spatial audio effect, go right ahead. But it just, some stuff was on, a little bit on the left and a little on the right, and I was not blown away by it. Just put it that way.
I'm scrolling down to try and find some more questions. And there's a lot of chat too, so I'm trying to.
Oh yeah, people are chatting.
Trying to go through
the chat. How dare you chat in the chat about this
Dylan asks, is connectivity with the studio display generally better, i.e. more reliable than with the LG Ultrafine or other non-Apple displays? I know lots of people who've had issues with the Ultrafine to the point of returning them because they're wonky. And Mike has those issues, right? Didn't Mike have a whole thing where it wouldn't turn on or something?
And Casey List just had to send his back in. I've never used the LG Ultrafine, or I think I had one briefly as part of a review and then sent it back. So I have no long-term data on that, nor do I have any long-term data
Thanks for joining me today. Turn the fans off for a minute. I want to say goodbye at least. Thanks for joining me. Should be on around 6:15 Pacific tomorrow to frog ride with the diesel and warm up. And then I'm going to be warming up all the way to the base of the Alp. And the goal, hopefully, my legs are feeling up for it, is to go sub 60 on the Alp. So I actually did it with the club on Wednesday. My trainer cut out at turn 1 though. So I didn't get a time to the Alp to the top. I would have set a PR. Set PRs the whole way up, basically, like a couple minutes at the bottom and then a few seconds by the time you're at the top, every time, like 10 or 15 seconds. So I possibly would have been very close to 60 anyways. So we shall see how that goes. And actually it was fairly easy pace. I think I was average like around between 2.7 and 3.0 watts per kilogram, and it felt quite easy, conversational, compared to the time before that, which was slower and felt hard, like I was just dying in here. So anyway, that's it. Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. if you want to see some more streaming of Tour of Watopia Stage 3. Have a good one.